Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And thank you to everyone who is here and agreed to participate in our webinar on nature-based solutions and small islands developing states. Thank you so much for being here. We had several people registering, so others may join in at some point. But again, I thank you. So we thought we'd have a webinar, just a quick discussion on nature-based solutions and SIDS, because we're all trying different things to try to adapt to climate change. And nature-based solutions, we know, will allow us to be able to adapt in a way that will help our ecosystems to survive, to thrive, and give us those services that we depend on, whether it's provisioning, whether it's protection, whatever it is that we need, our ecosystems can provide those supporting functions that we need. And so we thought we'll convene this meeting to have a discussion about it, see what's happening in different contexts. And so we've invited different speakers who Thembika will introduce, but I wanted to share that this is happening under a project called Ecological Collectivity and Community Resilience. It's been happening in Grenada and Jamaica. And it's basically how can we build resilience in coastal communities using nature-based solutions. So in Jamaica, they are looking at mangrove restoration. But in Grenada, they're looking at that enabling environment. So in one of the communities, they're actually looking at advocacy. So what can be done with all the policies that exist and all these different stakeholders? So how can we help them to work together so that they do what the policies say, and they have all these different pieces of legislation that are pretty good, so how can we help them to use them to be able to make sure that the nature-based solutions are implemented and that they are in fact effective and providing those ecosystem services that we want, right? And so those are just some of the different things that we're looking at in this project that ends in February and is funded by the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund. And this is just one aspect of it. We have what we call our community of practice, where we invited different practitioners to learn about nature-based solutions. Some of them had an opportunity to go a bit further and learn a bit more about enhanced vulnerability and capacity assessment, which really showed how to assess vulnerabilities and capacities and understand then how to use nature-based solutions within that context. And then we also developed a platform hosted by IFRC's platform that is really supposed to be a discussion board for nature-based solutions. So any issue that you may have on nature-based solutions, you could post it there. And this is just another activity that we have to support that community of practice. The project is being implemented by 4 different partners: the IFRC, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. We are the contracting partner, so we are the ones who deal with the donor, the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, but it's being implemented jointly with the Jamaica Red Cross in Jamaica, the Grenada Red Cross Society in Grenada, and the Wetlands International, who is really the technical expert. So they have all the mangrove knowledge. And so they are doing lots of the mangrove work in Jamaica. I want to apologize because my camera is off. Electricity went. I would share my screen, but I don't have that lovely background that we all had. Hi. Oh, wow. I forgot to take off my filter. Hi, this is me. And yeah, so I'm on my phone because electricity went. We're based in Trinidad and Tobago, and we're having a bit of a weather situation. We're under a weather alert that is supposed to end at the end of today. So some of us have no electricity and using our phones for data. My colleague Tambika will now introduce our speakers and get this meeting started. Tambika.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tambika Jaramugi. I'm a climate change trainee with the IFRC, Trinidad and Tobago Country Cluster. I have the opportunity or the pleasure of introducing our panelists today. So far on our call, we have two of our carded speakers, which would be Mrs. Kamba Jaramugi and Mr. Orlando Jimenez. We are also supposed to have a third speaker, which is supposed to be Ibrahim Shamil. And I'm not seeing him in as yet, but I'm not sure if he's having some difficulties joining us, so I'm hoping that he joins us a bit later. So the goal today is to have a panel where we have a mix of persons from across the globe. We have Kamba Jaramugi, who represents the Fondes Amandes Community Reforestation Project, which is situated in Trinidad. She's a technical director, and the Fonsaman Community Reforestation Project is an NGO who is strongly engaged in environmental-based management, nature-based solutions, and ecosystem management. We also have Orlando Jimenez, who represents the Belize Red Cross, and they do some really nice and interesting work in regards to nature-based solutions, climate change, and so forth within our region, which is the Caribbean region. And our third speaker is supposed to be Ibrahim Shamil, who is from the Maldives, and he represents the Maldivian Red Cross. So first we will have to present for us today, Kamba Jaramugi from Fonsaman Community Reforestation Project. Kamba, you could present now. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Everyone.
You may be on multiple devices, Kamba. You're muted.
Greetings, everyone. You all are hearing me?
Yep. Yes, we were hearing you now. You could go ahead.
All right. So I would like to say thanks for the introduction and thanks for the patience for all our listeners. I too have been having connectivity issues. No electricity this morning. It just came back, but it's quite very slow connection. So I would like to say welcome, and as we get to talk about nature-based solutions this morning. So I would like to start by saying a little bit about what the Fonsaman Community Reforestation Project has been doing for the past 40 years. So one of the things that we focus on is bush and forest fire prevention, as well as reforestation, as the name would suggest. And I really liked in the introduction when Keisha just mentioned, part of it is creating an enabling environment for the work to happen. One of the things when we look at nature-based solutions, one of the things that propels us in this direction is looking at two core things. Is this system that we wish to put in place, is this eco-engineering system we're putting in place, is it something that is easily transferable? Is it something that is easy to understand by the community members who we serve and who are a part of our team or who provide services? So that is the way in which we started. That's the premise in which we started to build upon. So our organization, as we say, tackles the work of our organization in modules. So the Fonsaman Community Reforestation Project has several modules to guide the work that we do as an NGO. So the first thing being, how do we manage surface water runoff? Because we're focused on reforestation, but hillside reforestation, which is different from a flat piece of land. This hillside is also affected by bush and forest fires every year, and or threatened by bush and forest fire every year. So the main reason we are doing reforestation is because of the negative impacts of bush and forest fires. So when we look at what are we doing to implement or to have nature-based solutions, or what are we doing within our community? So what we have been doing, firstly, is looking how to manage surface water runoff within our community to facilitate reforestation efforts. Because one of the things that we know within small island and developing states or developing countries, a lot of us face water challenges. And looking at the way that we can retain water on the land for reforestation purposes is one of the things that we focus on through our surface water management systems, which is putting several contour drains, check dams in place using natural materials sourced from within our communities, so that when it's time to replace, when it's time to rebuild, when it's time to do maintenance, all our team members, staff, volunteers know where these resources come from. It's pretty inexpensive. However, on the other hand, when we're looking at inexpensive, easily transferable, it often means labor intensive. So those are some of the things that goes hand in hand in looking at that one aspect of the nature-based solution for looking at this. And now this nature-based solution has a lot of rippling effects. So where we have all our contour drains and check dams, part of the process of the contour drains and check dams is to capture different things within our water runoff. So some of it is filtering seeds that drops from our fruit-bearing trees, mulch, leaf litter, as well as siltation that is happening during natural runoff. So because of this, we actually take all that organic material back to our Clean Tree organic nursery. So when we talk about we need topsoil for planting more seedlings within our Clean Tree organic nursery, we harvest that soil from the land that would have otherwise run off the mountainside quickly and then end up as siltation in our rivers or in our roads. If you all would permit me to take off my camera, so I can probably save on bandwidth, which might make it easier for you all to hear me clearly, as well as give me a notice if I break up when I'm speaking, right? So it's sort of like a circular practice. When nature-based solutions are in place, the benefits are exponential, rather than someone's coming in here with concrete and a drain or some sort of heavy mechanism in place or knowledge or systems that is difficult to translate. So once again, what we focus on with our nature-based solutions is understanding that in order for it to be sustainable, or we implement to be sustainable, be able to know how to use it, we ourselves must be able to understand it clearly outside of hiring a consultant or engineer or something like that, and which also mirrors traditional knowledge systems where the entire community would have known how to manage surface water runoff from their hillsides, from their communities, and so forth. When we look at how we manage or how we work towards mitigating the impacts of bush and forest fires, we also look at the importance of creating, which prevents fires from crossing one piece of land to the other. Once again, this is quite labor intensive, so we often rely on community members who are coming out there to help us cut fire breaks, fire tracers, to make sure the community is prepared in the event of a bush and forest fire. So that is one of our main ways of preparing for the fire season, in addition to advocacy. So when we look at the things that we would like to roll out within our. Sometimes it may seem as, that may be simple, but with consistent application, these systems, then you realize to see the long-term impact and how it's beneficial. And I'd just like to share a little story. Back in 2023, we would have worked with some Haitian fellows in partnership with Canary when they came to Trinidad to do their fellowship. And one of the things that seriously blew them away is the way in which we implement our contour drains and check dams. So we put them together. They are not separated. At the end of every single one of our contour drains is a check dam. And the Haitians were like, they know about the both of them, but they never seen it work together and how reducing the speed of runoff, which will then result in less landslides, less soil leaving your hillside, more water retaining on your land, creating dampening spots throughout the hillside, which then creates more water on the land to facilitate faster growth of tree species. So when we talk about the benefits of this, it's quite far and reaching. And you also collect all your seedlings, seeds, all these things from your drain that would otherwise run off from your hillside. And I just want to reiterate, hillside regeneration, reforestation requires a bit more work than a flat landscape that would naturally have water sinks created naturally to facilitate water storage or reforestation. And that is one of the reasons why sometimes sloping terrains have the issue of desertification quicker than flat surfaces of land. So for us at Fonsamon, over the years, we have been teaching about surface water management, the importance of understanding the contour lines, the importance of being within the community that you serve. So then you see all the natural patterns of the land, and then you also get to understand how to switch up and have that flexibility of changing systems or just adjusting it a little bit or using a slightly different approach to using these systems. And it's for us, it's quite rewarding because we also go into other communities and see how they use their systems, and it has been working. So, we could attest to using stone check dams as well as living structures for your check dams, which often is done with glory cedar and so forth. And retaining water on the land is such an important part of it, and it's not something that is a quick fix. So I'm looking forward to taking questions later on, to hearing the other presenters, and just seeing how those impacts are felt within the community. But for us, when we look at the impacts of putting in these systems, we've seen a higher growth of trees and tree survival within these areas, because one of the impacts of climate change is the higher increase in temperatures. And sometimes with that heat exposure in the middle of our dry season, when it's the hottest days, we often have trees suffering from heat stroke. We lose a lot of trees sometimes during the dry season. So this now would allow trees to survive harsher conditions, harsher climatic conditions. So not only is it just a nature-based solution, it's also a way of adapting to climate change. What systems are we putting in place to reduce all our water resource leaving the hillside? And another one, which is quite obvious, is putting rainwater harvesting systems on all our structures with roofs. So be it our fire tower, whatever huts we may have, the roofing for the nursery area, we make sure and collect every drop of water that can be used as well. So sometimes, things may be things that we can recognize in terms of what we call eco-based solutions, or it may not seem so technical and catchy, or we may not put it in the most marketable or fancy or sexy terminologies. But at the end of the day, these are things that are able to be repeated, is things that are can be easily implemented in communities, is things that the layman can relate to, is things that traditional communities will say, my grandfather or great-grandparents used to do these things as well. So it's really honoring that tradition and honoring processes that were here before. When we talk about permaculture, it's really permanent agriculture, systems that would be permanent, that would have long-lasting impacts. So these are the type of systems that we rely on, and a lot of it is also based or can only flourish with community. So for now, I would stop there and hand it over to Tambika or Keisha. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kemba. And thank you for the wealth of knowledge that you would have shared and on the experiences of Fonsaman Reforestation Project, Community Reforestation Project. Now, I would like to hand over the floor, or pass the floor to Mr. Orlando Jimenez. He is from Belize Red Cross Society. He will also be presenting on the work that is being done by the National Society in Belize with regards to nature-based solution. So the floor is now yours, Mr. Jimenez.
Well, pleasant good morning to one and all. As already introduced, Orlando Jimenez. I am from the Belize Red Cross. And I want to start this little presentation by saying that my background in agriculture in my early years was a time when the Industrial Revolution was on. And then the lecturers would tell us, you need to kill everything. Kill everything in your way. Kill the forests, kill the weeds so that you have good production. You need to kill all the insects so that they don't bother your crops. And then we were introduced to a lot of monocropping so that you have to get citrus only. If it's pasture, it's grass only. If it's crops, it's only corn. There was nothing like intercropping, nothing like water management, nothing. Everything was supposed to be kill, kill, kill. Then I was introduced to what we call integrated pest management. And here we learned a lot about several funguses, several bacteria that can be used as beneficial for your activities, insects that are beneficial to your activities. And we learned about genetic transfer so that we could improve our crops, our livestock, artificial insemination in cattle. And then we were introduced to grafting of bees for improvements, and then the grafting of trees. I wanted to set this stage for me to be able to tell you that nature-based solutions in our context has changed the way how we were looking at things back then. As we understand nature-based solution, this is a system where we want to mimic what nature does to protect biodiversity, to protect nature, to protect our well-being, and also to build resilience in community. And all these actions we want to do is to counter events like floods, like sea level rise, storms, anthropogenic actions, because we are very good at involve ourselves in the consumerism, and we generate a lot of garbage. So it's important for us to also consider the anthropogenic pollutions that we do daily. All of this is in a way to reduce disaster risk in our country and subsequently in the world. And doing all this, we need to include our communities, because it makes no use for us to be doing things in a silo. We have to include our communities for them to buy into the concepts that we are promoting. Not that they don't know, they are already practicing a lot of the things, the new things that we are doing. They do not call it nature-based solution then, but they are doing sustainable management to a certain level. But because we have technocrats like I was at the time, that comes and say you have to kill all insects, you have to kill all trees, they were following, believing that we are the experts and we are the ones that know everything. But including them, now we learn that these people know a lot, indigenous knowledge that we can use to improve nature-based solutions in the communities and in the country, subsequently the world. I want to mention that we have been working with a few things here and there. We have been researching and promoting the vetiver grass, which serves as a nature-based solution primarily for soil stabilization, erosion control, and water purification through the deep root system and biofiltration properties. This vetiver does grow deep in the ground and brings up Hello? You hear
We're
me,
hearing
Miss? You
you.
hear me? Right, sure. So this is already taking root in our country. We are getting people, especially in our city, in the different large companies, to grow vetiver grass, not only as for the purpose mentioned, but also as for its aesthetic value. They look beautiful in hedges and so on. Also, in some parts of the country, some of our cattle ranchers are using the Jatropha curcas, which serves also as an HB solutions for soil enhancement and phytoremediation. And this means that whatever lead or pollutants are in the ground, the Jatropha is going to extract into its system, and then we produce oil, biofuels from this plant. And also it serves as a barrier in cattle ranching, as a live fencing in the cattle ranch. And then the non-traditional one, and the one that is really impacting the world, is the protection of mangroves. Mangroves for coastal protection, for biodiversity protection, and also for carbon sequestration. And we have learned from information that 50% of the world mangrove is gone. So we need to protect it because it's one of the best trees for carbon sequestration. Now in Belize, to support these adaptations, we are doing the mangrove restoration one, and also Belize has pledged to restore 4,000 hectares of mangroves by 2030 under the updated National Determined Contribution, the NDC, for the Paris Agreement, alongside protecting an additional 12,000 hectares of mangrove. Research, planting, and regulations on mangrove cutting support this effort, with initiatives in our country in two of our main peninsulas, in Placencia and Gales Point, and they are tourist destinations at the same time. And the planting of mangroves here is led by World Wildlife Foundation, Mesoamerica, Clearwater Marine Aquarium, and the government. As Red Cross, we are not really very much involved in the planting of this, but we do participate in their different forums where we can communicate our nature-based ideas and partner with them to do a good work in nature-based solution, which is advocacy. And we also are involved in promotion of tree planting. And here is where one of our main flagship comes into play. We know it as Maya nut, although it's not a Maya nut. And this Maya nut is something that the farmers and cattle ranchers have been using for years and years, especially those that live in the high forest when they were bleeding chicle, extracting chicle. They use this tree for food, for their own food, and also to feed their livestock because the leaves are a very good source of fiber and nutrients for livestock. One of the advantages of Maya nut is it is an evergreen tree that during the dry season, it is green. So it helps with shade, with reduction of heat, and also bringing up water from way down from the water table up to the surface. So it's a very good plant to have as an HB solution. The amount of biomass this tree produces also is far higher than grasses planted, because grasses are planted on the surface of the ground, but the Maya nut grows vertical, and the amount of leaves that is produced in the branches far surpasses the amount of grass you can get per acre in grown the way it is grown. Another tree that is very interesting, and it is not native to Belize, we did not know it. We have trees like this, which are ice cream trees, we call them, the Inga edulis. This Inga edulis produces a large pod, like between 3 and 4 feet long, thin. It's about 1 inch in diameter, and it produces a mucilage that people eat as a snack, or it can even be a lunch. And it is also the seeds are used for food. You can boil the seeds, and it has a taste like boiled Irish potatoes. Now the Inga reduces heat because it's a big tree, and it adds nitrogen and organic matter to soil and has other climatic impacts. It also produces a place for the animals to stay and also feed for wildlife. And then during the fires last year here in Belize, we stumbled on an indigenous tree that has been used for the extraction of resin for ceremonial purposes and also for income generation, as the resin from this tree is exported to Guatemala. No, this tree is not cut down. This tree is protected by the indigenous people because they want the resin, so they protect it. But after the fire, much of these trees were burnt, and so they are now planting these trees to replace those that were destroyed by the fire. Together with this tree is called copal tree, Proteum copal. It is not only endemic to Belize, but it's a Central American tree, and mostly the indigenous people use it. In addition to this tree, in some of our country, our people eat the cohoon heart, the palm, the heart of palm. So they would cut down the cohoon tree that once cut down, it's gone, it's dead. It produces a lot of seeds, yes, but once it's gone, it takes forever for a new seed to grow. And with this, the people are protecting this tree. They cut off the bunches because they use the leaves for thatch, for roofing, and so they protect it. So they are already doing this, so why not capitalize and expand on the values that this tree has? Not cutting it down, protecting it, but also utilizing the nuts to make oil, to make soap that is going to contribute to some of the activities that the Red Cross does in the health and hygiene part. To complement the cohoon tree, we are trying to introduce the peach palm, which is a palm that regenerates much like a banana does, that throws suckers whenever it is cut down. So this regenerates. So you can cut down one, eat the heart, and then you will have new plants sprouting to replace the one that you've cut. In contrast to the cohoon, where you cut and the cohoon dies. This tree then will be able to afford people with food during events or where there is no event. It's food security, and it would also contribute to other climatic impacts that the climate change is affecting the globe. And I want to mention that the government has committed to the bond agreement, and we are capitalizing as being auxiliary to the government. We also are supporting them in the planting of trees. They committed to the bond agreement from 2020 to 2030 to regenerate 130,000 hectares of land, 50,000 hectares for forests, and 80,000 hectares in agricultural landscape. Additionally, we have also launched a 1 million trees initiative that we are calling Greening Belize, and this is going to start, or should have started, in 2025 and into 2035. And then we cannot leave out work that has been done here with cover crop for soil management, the Mucuna prurens, which is a legume vine, we call it the fertilizer beans. This serves as mulch and also as a cover crop for moisture retention, soil moisture retention, organic matter addition, and weed control in some of the fields that the farmers have, especially corn fields. It is very, very aggressive. It covers the surface of the soil, keeps the moisture in. And recently, some people are experimenting on it because they learned that in Africa, it has been used for a source of medicine. It is not taking as much root as we want it to, because some of our partners claim that it is a place where snakes would hide. And in places where there is a lot of snakes, people are reluctant to use it. However, we do not have a lot of accidents or deaths because of snake bites. But if it's managed properly, then we can have other things control snakes. If we have chickens, if we have turkeys, they would be able to control the snakes. So it's a solution also to this problem that they are perceiving, and it's not in total yet proved. And then we are into marine conservation, and we have a lot of interest here. And with this present project that we want to roll out, or we have rolled out, but we want to do some field activities at Caplima, we are going to stress some work in the coast, where a lot of the anthropogenic problems is creating issues. The Green Climate Fund and then the Belize Blue Bond provides $160 million for marine protection, including the coral reef, seagrass and manatees, and the benthic life. And to this, we are going to add the protection of the coast with mangroves, garbage collection, and so on, and set up systems where we are going to mimic nature in doing what it does best. And then in the agriculture field, we are also working along with the agriculture department to improve on smart agriculture practices, the climate smart practices such as greenhouses. They are promoting this in the country, and we have seen this to have good impact in the production of vegetables. When our people plant vegetables out in the fair, in the rain, it gives you one crop. But in the climate smart agriculture, under the cover structure, a plant could last up to a year. Like pepper is a biannual. It could live for 2 years and produce for 2 years if it's protected, if diseases do not take them over. So this is something that the agriculture department is promoting, and we are working along with them. And we have done in the city 2 of these structures, not only for food security or for nature-based solution, but also to assist in the curbing of youth mentality that are sometimes leaned towards criminal activity. So we want to change that mentality as well. So it's a multi-purpose activity, not only for nature-based solutions. The agriculture department is also promoting crops that are tolerant to the climate changes when it comes to temperatures. The cactus that we are calling the dragon fruit is been promoted because it grows in the heat condition. It cannot do well in lowland, but it does well in the highlands, and also when there is not enough rain, this crop is going to be an income generator for people that are producing it. Also, they have identified new varieties of coconut, like the May palm and so on. So people are planting these things in a system where they do not totally cut down the whole forest, but are intercropping in the forest, what we call agroforestry. Soursaps, coconuts, and other fruit trees that are planted within the forest, and they are making use of the area, not destroying nature as they go along. Vanilla is something that grows wild in our country, and they are introducing new varieties of vanilla. It's already here. Vanilla likes a lot of rain. So in a part of our country, in the southern part where we have a lot of rain, it might change down the road, but vanilla is very suitable for that area. No, all these things sound pretty, but they do not come without challenges. And one of our major challenge in getting these things rolling is financial challenges. And I guess it's not only Belize, it's all over the world. People are competing more for financing, and it's hard to get as we compete with each other for that purpose. So if we do not have finance, no matter how beautiful your project is, if you don't finance for continuity, then it ends there. It stops right there. Now, also capacity building is a challenge that we have, because we talk here at the office level. We try to talk informally to our volunteers, to our technicians about these things, but we need to be more aggressive in training our people for them to be the voice piece of the Red Cross when they are out in the field. But if we do not have the finance to engage these people, to train them, then we are at square one. So it's important for us to be able to access the finance, for us to be able to move, to mobilize people, and for us to move. Because, although we are thinking about climate issues, we still need to use vehicles to move around. We still need to do certain things that at a minimal pace, but finance is important. And the next thing is, we do not have a strong research system in our country. So we depend a lot on other people's research in the Caribbean, in Central America, North America. And a lot of times the information that we gather are not information that are suitable to our context. So we need to be more aggressive in doing our own research, learning from mistakes that people have done in the past, and adopting their practices for us to be able to do something much better. And with science, this can be done. The other thing is that a lot of our technocrats, they use jargon to communicate, and we need to learn how to communicate these things in a user-friendly way so that people understand what we are talking. People do not know nature-based solutions. We do this at our level, but when we go to the fields, we need to bring this down to a level that our people understand what is nature-based solution, and then we need to explain this in detail and in a way that is understood by everything. Another challenge, because we want ownership of whatever we do, is that our population are used to gray infrastructure. Even our village councils, they say, you know what? I am in the village council for 3 years. I need to put in a community center. I need to put in a health center because when I leave, I'll be remembered by these things. The use of nature-based solution, forests and so on, is not sexy. It will not, we will not be able to see the benefits right away in 3 years. It's a long-term investment, and people they do not want to wait. The economic pressure is great, and the visibility that they want is now. So we need to work more to get people to buy into this and explain to them more in detail what would be the benefits to our village and our country, and in turn, the world. The last thing I want to say, not really the last thing, I have some more things to say about them, is that we have weak policy frameworks. And this comes because of poor networking. Our networking with each other is poor. Each ministry, each organization does their own thing because they have donors to satisfy, they have projects to complete, and the time for them to be able to network is not as strong as we should have it. We should have it. And then whenever we have events like fire and hurricanes, the funds that we have earmarked to do certain things is reallocated for responses and so on. This is what I want to know. And for us to be able to address these problems, we're required to build more long-term partnership. And we need to advocate for stronger and supportive policies and improve the community engagement strategies. And then we need to secure funding streams. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was useful.
Thank you, Orlando. We really do appreciate all the insights and the wealth of knowledge that you bring to this discussion. Now we are going into another part of our segment where we're going to actually have a bit of a more interactive session, which is going to be led by Keisha. So we are now going into our panel discussion where we have questions for our panelists, as well as our general audience will be allowed to engage with our panelists so that we could get a little clearer understanding on nature-based solutions in a SIDS context. Keisha, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sambika, and thanks, Kemba and Orlando. Really, really good points that you raised about how nature-based solutions look different in each of your contexts. Kemba, you are at the Funzerman's community reforestation program. This is an extensive area close to Port of Spain, the capital of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is really looking at fires and the reforestation efforts from all the fires that would have gone on for donkey years, so trying to get the ecosystem back to being healthy. And Fonzaman has been exceedingly successful with using nature-based solutions for this. And Orlando would have given us a background of what is happening in Belize and the different activities that Belize is undertaking. So mangrove restoration, he talked about financing for different things on the coast, with conserving the reef and the coastal environment, And then Orlando also spoke about what Belize Red Cross is doing with the Mayana tree, and then spoke about the ice cream tree, which is not exactly native to Belize. Please correct me if I'm incorrect, Orlando, but the work that they're doing and how successful, how rather how they could benefit the communities that the Belize Red Cross is supporting, right? Um, so these were some really, really good examples. Now, Trinidad and Tobago, two islands, two main islands with some smaller offshore islands. Belize is part of the Central American landmass. So not exactly an island, but Belize does have several islands. Both are considered SIDS because they face such similar problems. So despite the fact that the main land of Belize is not an island in itself, it is still considered a small island developing state. Just in case anyone was wondering why Belize was included as one of the panelists in a SIDS context. Um, so we heard about different challenges, right? Kemba, you spoke very eloquently about labor. Orlando, you spoke about financing and getting buying from communities. You spoke about weak policy framework, right? But one thing that we have come across repeatedly is the problem of land tenure or even competing developmental goals. So we know that, for example, land that is under a mangrove forest may be um, targeted for maybe a housing project or maybe even a business or some complex or maybe a marina, something else that necessitates our leaders to take down those mangroves that are protecting the communities nearby. So, in your work, what have you found to be how are you able to navigate those competing priorities, Orlando and Kemba? I open the floor to you, and then to our other participants.
Okay, so once everyone can hear me and I'm not breaking up too much, I can go first.
Hearing
I
you.
realize I didn't list, sorry? Yeah, so I realized I didn't list some of the challenges that we face as an organization. But a lot of the reforestation work that is necessary and the bush and forest fire advocacy and mitigation work, it was not a new concern for Trinidad and Tobago. It was recorded early is 1905, 1906, that it was an issue to the crown. That's before we were independent. Because a lot of our practices are sort of embedded on our post-slavery culture, which is cleaning by burning. So that is one thing that when we're talking about native-based solutions, when we're talking about getting community involved, when we talk about creating sustainable income from forest-based products or forest-based projects, programs, activities. So one of the ways in which we have tried to change patterns within our community through creating jobs through ecosystem services was back in from 1997 to present, we would have trained several dozens of field technicians, of education officers, eco tour guides over the years, so that once you see the forest as a resource, then you're more compelled to protect it, to ensure that your job is secure or the work that you're putting is secure. So that's just one little pin that I want to put in there. But what really has that negative impact on us is when, and I think our other speaker touched on it, is when policies change or government change or programs are discontinued. So one of the programs that has been recently discontinued is the National Reforestation and Watershed Management Program, which was started back in 2004, I believe. So for the past 20 years, we would have had over 50 organizations throughout Trinidad and Tobago that would have been involved in community reforestation and forest fire prevention activities within their individual communities. And those were a grouping of people who we would have gone out to and even teach what we have been doing in Funzamon to strengthen their advocacy work, their community work, as not all groups were on the same level of knowledge of eco-based solutions or how to implement some of these best practices, and also to just share our experiences. So we found that very helpful over the last 20 years, because our mission as an NGO is not to start several other branches. It's about looking and meeting people where they're at. So once we know there are other organizations that are interested in doing similar work, we would go and we would share our experiences, our best practices, even sometimes some of the seeds or seedlings that we find most resilient, especially looking at some of the climate resilient species that we would have done research on back in 2016 and still continue to this day, things like that. But I think for us is, how do we navigate change when we don't really have that much power because we're so reliant on grants? And one of the things that people don't consider is the positioning of Trinidad and Tobago as a lesser developed country, or no, as a greater developing country. So it almost erases our need for resources, or it reads as Trinidad is fine. And for those of you who know Trinidad and Tobago, yes, we may see the wells, we may see one or two glossy buildings, we may know that we might be the leader in trade for the Caribbean or whatnot, or the manufacturing or production. But there are so many pockets of hunger. There are so many pockets of where people are chronically employed, which means they're almost unemployable. And for nature-based solutions is where we get a lot of people who may not be traditionally skilled on paper, saying, I have a degree in planting trees, but they have the grit, they have the power, they have the drive, the energy to do this type of work. They have the skill set of being a bushman. They can run through the forest. They know all the trails within the community. So when we're talking about sustainability and talking about solutions and eco-based systems, a big part of this dynamics, or a big part of this discourse is, where do people fit into this? And replacing the people who are doing this work is counterproductive. Starting over from scratch is counterproductive. Raising funds for an NGO is tireless work. And one of the things that we struggle with is meeting a deadline, especially when we have to fight fires during the dry season and do all our advocacy work. We would not prioritize sitting down writing a proposal. There are some activities that are sadly only done by NGOs that requires annual funding. And it's not sexy. It does not give donors the best, I mean, depending on their marketing team, but it doesn't give a lot of donors what they actually want. A lot of donors would not come up and walk to the top of the ridgetop to see the vastness of the work that is done, or the vastness of the acreage that is protected, or the results of their funding. So we need to find ways in which we can probably attract people who can make those connections and those linkages and those pretty flowery reports that they want, and that it does not erase or take away the time that we need to spend in the forest doing putting these systems in place. Because one of the things we also don't believe in is getting 100% of your funding and 60% go into paperwork and reporting and photo and technical stuff. No, the bulk of the money, the bulk of the resources is supposed to be going into the actual action. So, this is where sometimes we find it very difficult to navigate, and to also understand what measures or what systems that is being used by the donor community to justify why they don't see the value in allocating resources for nature-based solutions, or the people who are implementing these nature-based resources systems. That is more important than the flowery report or the 1,000,001 high-resolution photos or this and that. We know accountability is important, but we should also put higher importance on the people who are doing this work and sustaining the work out in the field. Because back in the days when we had in-person meetings, we could bring the whole team out, they can go to a conference, they can see their work on a big screen, they could interact with people and know their work is reaching somewhere. But now it's almost like the people who are actually doing this work is becoming more and more invisible. And with greater invisibility, it's easy to erase the work, the results, everything. So we need to find ways in which we can really empower the sector and to keep that reverence or importance of continuing these eco-based system solutions that is rooted in tradition. A lot of these solutions are just changing in names, but is rooted in a lot of tradition. So just to pay homage to all that work that is being done, finding ways those people who are involved in policy making and involved in that sort of plenary decision making in aid agencies and government organizations to not underscore those importance. So I would stop there for now because I know we have other questions and so on coming our way.
Thanks, Kemba, for going back over and telling us what your other challenges were. Orlando, do you have any comments? My question was about those competing priorities for space. Do you have any comments on that?
I do have a comment, but it's more in regards to the land tenure and ownership of the NBS activities. And in our country, the land ownership is mostly uncertain, and people are afraid to invest their capital in development because then they stand to be evicted or removed at any time. So what we do to counteract this is to talk to them, advocate with them that they must be able to spend time and try to access their documents for their land. Okay, how long it takes, they're supposed to be very insistent on getting their documentations. And then when it comes to the planting of trees, timber is something that wherever you plant it, if you do not harvest it, somebody will harvest it for you because it's valuable. So we encourage them to plant fruit trees. For this will bring back the birds, will bring back the animals, you will have food, and then people will not be much interested in cutting it down for timber or for that type of use. And then we coerce them, always coerce them. And the political country, they a lot of times hold where people come to them and in getting their documents. This is very good, but a lot of times, the politicians, they have their own people, their own voters, and they would put more importance to the people that vote for them. So, but still, it goes a long way, even if they are helping half of the country. And when it comes to the adaptation plans in communities, and we work with communities or most communities, we have like 193 different rural communities, and we have them coming up with plans. The hurricane and fires and so on, but also looks at integrated community development where they will think about health structure, they will think about work, they will think about everything, and we put that in a document, and if they are development plans, then they will be able to move forward. And one of the challenges that was not mentioned is that we need to develop trust in our communities. They trust us and they trust one another, because if we do not trust one another, then there is no forward movement. Everybody is an individual. They live individually. They work as an individual, as a small family, and the trust is eroded. So there is a lot of work we need to do to build us this part. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Orlando. So yes, land tenure definitely is a problem. So in this project that we're doing, the Ecological Connectivity and Community Resilience Project, one of the problems we ran into in Jamaica was that we had issues with understanding which governmental organization should give the okay to use a particular piece of land in one of the communities that we wanted to work with in the Portland Bight protected area. And we were having issues for years because we actually started this aspect of the project under previous projects, two other projects, and we were never able to get the permission because it was either NEPA or it was I think it was National Land Agency. So they were competing. And then you had private entities as well who wanted to use that same piece of land that we wanted to plant mangroves on. And then when you look at other areas within the Caribbean, and I can't really speak to other small island states, but within the Caribbean, land tenure tends to be an issue where we have land being passed down through generations, but deeds probably don't exist, or governments not being sure which governmental agency should have ownership of this land, whether because it's on the coast, it may be the planning division or land management, or because it was forested, it may be forestry. And so we have all these competing entities that want to have ownership of this very small space that we are now living on that is threatened. So land tenure tends to be an issue that we face. Kemba, I don't know if you want to speak to that or if any of our other participants would like to raise their hands and speak to that as well.
Yeah, I would go quickly. So one of the things that with land tenure, it's like a huge issue depending on where your work is being coordinated. So for example, in Fonzamon, the entire watershed we manage. Now we don't have a deed for the entire watershed, and also that is not something that we are looking for. What we are looking for is protection status, so that all the work that is done, all the changes we've made over the years with our reforestation efforts, we don't want to see, as you mentioned, competing interests in housing, because the area where Fonzamon is, it's prime real estate, right? It's prime real estate. However, ecologically speaking, it is the main water intake from the St. Anne's watershed. Now, the St. Anne's watershed has several tributaries. However, the Fonzamon watershed is the least contaminated out of all, because it has the lowest footprint in terms of residents and the lowest amount of contaminated runoff. And within Fonzamon is where we have the Water and Sewerage Authority, where we have a filter bed, where we have a reservoir. So the work that we have done has been positively impacting the Water and Sewerage Authority in Trinidad for decades. Now, we know how things work if you have a change in administration and if we were to do a buyout or what are these things. So that is still a fear for us, that if we don't change the demarcation of the land, right now is state land, but it doesn't have any protected status. So that is some of the things what we're looking at for a lot of these areas has been reforested, that is being protected by bush and forest fires every year. And also what qualifies a land to be, under those status. I know you have to look for endemic species, endangered species. I mean, Fonzamon, the valley, we share the Chancellor Ridge. That is where the blue emperor butterfly was discovered, right? In the Fonzamon River as well is where they first identified the guabian being a specific species to our country, as well as the Trinidad stream frog, which we have in our watershed, as well as the ocelot that go in further and further into the hillside because of the consistent threat of bush and forest fires. So I am saying this to say, we would more call for protected status, because once that goes into there, then it allows for other systems to come into place where funding might be more accessible. The actual governance of the day would have responsibility for managing these lands, because state lands has a different sort of notation than protected lands. So, those are some of the things that we're looking at, and we really started to focus more on that when we're working on our draft bush and forest fire policy for Trinidad and Tobago, where now we have to go to state lands. Who is responsible for managing state lands now is the Ministry of Agriculture, because they also have the responsibility for forestry division, right? Is now under them for a little while now, for a few years now. So that is where we're at right now. And we need to have a bigger call to action for that, like more lands. How often do we upgrade areas that are protected? So it should be something that is revised every 10 years with the census or something like that. So it falls within a government mechanism already, because you have to do the surveys every 10 years. And it would actually showcase, that whole systematic buy-in to a process. So that is just one of my suggestions, as well as what we've been facing on the ground. I see Orlando has a.
Actually, it's me, Frederick. The Belize has we have what we call the 66.
I'm not sure if it's just me, but I am not hearing you guys properly. So I don't know if you could take off your video, Fred and Orlando, because I'm not here. Yes, thank you. All right,
Can you hear me now?
much better.
Hello?
Thank you. Much better.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So yes, Belize has the law that any 66 feet from the high tide or high river mark, all riverine areas, all coastal areas, comes under government control. It's not privately owned. However, that doesn't apply to private titles received before 1860, I think. So it's become an issue. The high developed areas like the tourism areas in the Keys, etc. But there is some degree of protection. And in many of the communities that we have worked in, the communities come together, they realize that even though the front line is privately owned, if the protection is taken down, it will affect the properties behind the front line of properties. So it becomes a community issue. And particularly in some of the communities that we have worked in, on the coastal communities, there is a community cohesion in addressing the reforestation of the coastline, not just with mangrove, but with other species like Mr. Orlando mentioned earlier, vetiver grass, bamboo, and other species, to hold the soils together to prevent the entire, not just the front line of properties, but all the properties behind the front line of properties from being eroded away. So there is that community cohesion, and that's where a lot of our work in getting them speaking to each other, organized and acting in one, like, under one head and one voice, does have a positive impact. And with the wildfires and the nature-based solutions, it's not just making fire breaks, it's establishing plants that are resistant, living fire breaks, resistant to fire, because they maintain them, like Mr. Orlando mentioned, the Mayan nut is so deep-rooted that when everything else is brown and dry, they are green and thriving. They will not burn. And a hurricane won't blow them down either. So they have a double benefit. But a lot of this work that we're doing, it's bringing the communities together and having them talking and thinking together. And we've seen very positive results. Particularly in the Southern District, the Mayan communities, they have communal land ownership. And it's the what you call it, the community leaders that assign where the different families are allowed to farm, to harvest from the forest, or to do any activities in the surrounding forest. It's not privately owned, it is community owned. And it's not government owned either. It's the community that calls the shots, the community leaders. And those united communities, it also, that concept also exists in a lot of the communities. I have worked in the north, in the central area, where there is private ownership and like that, but they're smart enough to know that they need to work together as a community, not as individuals. And that's where particularly we have a big impact, getting the communities to think and speak as one. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred and Orlando, and thank you, Kemba, for circling back to the land tenure issue. Um, it's a personal thing for me. Just trying to understand how do we navigate this properly and in a timely manner, especially given that we are all dependent on grant funding and the grants may have a finite time, so how do we work within these contexts? Anyway, something Kemba said, and Orlando as well. You guys both touched on the issue of trust. For Kemba, I think it came out in terms of people who are chronically unemployed or who may be unemployable, and finding ways of making sure that they're still getting an opportunity to earn an income. And for Belize, the way I thought about what you said is that there must be something in it for them, for the communities to be able to buy into this whole idea of nature-based solutions, or else then they'll go back to using the methods that they would have used in the past, right? So how do we get this buy-in? I know livelihoods is a really big ideal that we do push, because we know that nature-based solutions are supposed to deliver social, environmental, and economic benefits, right? But how do we get that tangible livelihood benefits from our nature-based solutions? And the floor is open to both Orlando and Fred and Kemba. Over to you guys.
Okay, I'll take this before Kemba, if you don't mind. There are three things that is important for us to realize how to get this buy-in into whatever initiative we are trying to get people participation. And that is key, the community participation. As we mentioned, NBS has to have the inclusion of people for them to participate, for them to be the people who discuss what their input will be, and they know best. They are in the community. They are the ones who either celebrate there or punish there. So their participation, their involvement in the planning is essential for them to buy into whatever we want to do. For example, with the COPAL, we could not have taken the COPAL to the community and say, grow this because this is going to help with nature-based solutions, will give you money. But they are the ones who already have started this initiative long before we came in. So to capitalize on what they know by talking to them will spiral a much greater embracing of the initiative that we want to push, nature-based solutions. And to complement that, we need to build their skills so that they do a better. And skills, not only technical skills in how to produce these things, but also how to work with one another. We talk about trust. We need to build that also to trust one another for them to be able to. And the last thing is in what they do, we need to expect linkages, because it's no use that they grow things and they cannot sell it. In some of the communities we visited, they are doing this Jamaican ackee. They planted ackee. Somebody came with a great idea that ackee is a good product, but then when we went into the community, they said, where can I sell this or how can I use this? They do not know how to use the ackee. So that was not a good alternative. If it was done in Jamaica, we know how to eat ackee in Jamaica. We know how to prepare it. So that, along with the skill building, and then if they could sell whatever they produce, that would make them buy into the initiatives we are doing. And we need to promote more, along with them, the silvopastoral systems where they can grow their chicken, they can grow their sheep in the forest without cutting it down, and they can plant other trees that these animals will not eat, or they will live there for establishment. And also put in sustainable fishing alternatives. Do not only put out your net out there and catch whatever this net can catch, even the little ones, the little fish, the little lobster, and so on, but develop alternative fishing activities and technologies. Not only go to the sea to fish, but do something inland for you to be able to generate income, so you reduce the pressure on the sea. And one thing that we had done before, and a lot of people bought into it, is the use of the conch shell to do arts and craft. And they are selling it in the city as craft for earrings and bangles and chains and so on. So they harvest the conchs and they use the shell that they would normally dump back into the sea. They're using it to make jewelry. So this is something that we need to do, but in an integrated way, so that we enable the communities to earn a sustainable livelihoods, and at the same time we enhance nature. Thank you.
Thanks, Orlando.
Quickly, I'd like to just add that and when I go from way back when I was started going into the communities and trying to get the participation from the men, it says, Mr. Hunter, a hurricane may or may not come this year, but I know I have to feed my children today and tomorrow. So the bottom line is, what's in it for me? And if we can show them quickly that any effort that they put into alternative crops or more, disaster resistant or fire resistant, hurricane resistant, flood resistant crops, that will translate into increased economic benefits for them. That is not a cost to them, that it isn't just work for them, but that will actually put more money into their pockets for their children. There's immediate buy-in. But like Mr. Jimenez said, it has to be integrated. It's not just, we can grow root crops more effectively than green crops, but where are we going to sell it? So we have to have integrated systems, not just the science of it, but also the economics, the social structures, the political structures or will or whatever it is. It has to be a holistic approach.
That's a really, really good point, Fred. That it must have that holistic approach to be successful, to get that buy-in. It has to address the entirety of the community's, I don't want to say needs, but it has to address the community. Yeah, and Kemba?
Yeah. So I mean that's a very nice way to go into my feedback. And I would just share, I will see how quick I can do this, but I would just share like a tiny roadmap of how we started getting there. So in the earliest, like this is the early 2000s, we only had young people. And the older people in the community would say, why don't go out to the city and get a job? Because we're only 10 minutes away from the city. You're staying in the bush, and that's whole post-slavery mentality that you go out to the city and you get a job because you don't stay in the bush because that is not something to aspire towards. But what we started doing is having a lot of training workshops. So every time as an NGO, we will be invited by community development for training and all sorts of things. So over the years, we have had training in animal husbandry, in dendrology, in nursery management, in trained to be a firefighter by the fire services of Trinidad and Tobago. So a lot of training workshops, computer training. So some of the training weren't directly beneficial for us to onboard them on the work that we do, but it was for the people of the community. We also worked with the regional corporation to have the road paved, with WASA to have standpipes put into the community. So, a lot of times with NGOs, we fulfill so much roles, putting social programming after we don't have like hurricanes and so on, but when we have like tiny storms and roof blow off, act as the coordinating point with ODPM to make sure people get their roofs repaired or to get mattresses or that kind of thing. So when people hear NGO work and they hear, oh, you do forestry, it's like, yeah, because you don't want to spend all the time explaining all the stuff that you do. You want them to focus on the main thing. But civil society organizations are responsible for filling so many niche gaps. And if we turn a blind eye and said, well, we don't do that, we're environmental organization, we don't do computer training, or we don't do this and we don't do that, then we miss connecting to people where they're at. And even looking at how it's sustained, part of those training were things to make them more secure in their job with us at the point in time. So be it they were now being, the field technicians are also education officers because they have all been trained and they have the experience to go out there and talk about bush and forest fire prevention strategies, techniques, teach other communities how to develop their fire management plan. So we use the same people within our organization who do all the hard work in the field, and the extra reward is being upskilled to do education and outreach. So we have a tight grouping of people. But that's in one of the ways, it's building capacity, building that deeper relationships with our stakeholders, which are directly who we would need to impact. But sadly, this year we just had too many shocks, too many funding cuts, and too many programs put on pause. So a lot of people now had to leave to get more permanent employment. And even with them leaving, they were able to apply for jobs or to apply for jobs that they would not have had the skill set for prior. So they now have all these training, that, yes, we may risk losing staff after we train them. But at the same time, we have a lot of volunteers and people who come back every time they have a free time off because we have built those bonds and we have built that community. So, it's such an important part to invest in the human side of conservation, because who are we conserving it for? If we do nothing and we ban everyone from going into the land, nature will replenish itself. So what we're looking at is working in harmony with nature, looking at eco-based solutions that our community can benefit from, be it you're benefiting from no fires, or be it you're benefiting from reduced flooding. For those of you who know St. Anne's, back in 1991, if I remember correctly, we had a really bad flood within the community, and that was after consecutive years of devastating fires. 2 people died. I think 1 body was still missing. I was in primary school back then. I couldn't leave primary school until like 5 in the evening when one guy from the community came and pick up 15 kids from school together at the same time. Our bridge to Fonsaban was washed away. So we
Okay, Kemba, your video is paused. You are paused. I don't know if you want to take off your video. I don't know if everybody else is seeing her pause as well. If it's just me.
Tisha, I'm guessing she's having some internet issues, but connectivity issues. So I think we may need to
Yeah.
move on. And with time in mind, I think we should as well.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tambika and Kemba. Thank you. So I from what Kemba was saying, I got about it's not just about the nature-based solutions, about what you're doing. In her case, reforestation to reduce fire risk and flooding, right? But it is about investing in people who then in turn will invest in working with your actions, you know? So I like that point. And of course, I love the point that Orlando and Fred made about, you know, using this as a way to earn income and not just that, building on tradition. That is also something I took away from them. But what are your thoughts? People who are attending, our participants, do you have any thoughts or questions that you want to share? I open the floor to you. Okay, I saw no hands. I saw nothing in the chat. I saw nothing. So, with that in mind, I want to say thank you to everyone who attended, and a special thank you to both, well, not both, to Kemba from Funterman's Community Reforestation Program and to Fred and Orlando from the Belize Red Cross Society for presenting. I know Orlando did the main presentation, but Fred, I felt that you contributed enough to be part of the presentation as well. And again, to the ECCR project team for working on this, getting all the invitations out and doing the special backgrounds that I was not able to use. Apologies, because my electricity is gone and I'm using data. But thanks to everybody who would have put their effort into this and to being here and to presenting. We thank you all for being here. So our communication team will put together snippets of this webinar so that people will be able to see it in different ways, whether it's on social media, whether it's on the platform that I spoke about at the beginning. And thank you in advance for doing that. Communication team, Stephanie, Justin, Thambika. So thank you, everyone. And we may be having other webinars, maybe not as part of the Ecological Connectivity and Community Resilience Project, but as part of other initiatives that we have in the IFRC and the IFRC network as a whole. But yes, nature-based solutions is something that we are very interested in and that we want to hear your views and maybe see how we can integrate other organizations into. All right, so thank you everyone and have a wonderful rest of the day. Stay safe. Wherever it's rainy, stay extra safe, please. So take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome,
Saludos.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have
Pleasure
a good
being here.
afternoon. Well,